The ship came out of deep space like a metal bird falling through darkness. Kung Tae stood at the window and watched the planet grow bigger and bigger. Valaris Prime. He had seen pictures of it many times. The pictures were not the same as seeing it with his own eyes. The planet was covered in crystals. Tall towers of blue and white rose from the surface like frozen waterfalls. Cities made of glass stretched across the land. Even from space, Tae could see how beautiful it was. How strange. How alien. He had traveled for 3 months to reach this place. 3 months alone in a small ship with nothing but books and training videos. 3 months to prepare for the most important job of his life. Tae was a diplomat. His work was to talk to people, to understand them, to build bridges between different worlds. He had done this work on Earth for many years. He had helped countries make peace. He had sat in rooms with angry leaders and helped them find common ground. But this was different. This was not Earth, and the beings he would meet were not human. The Valari had contacted Earth 50 years ago. They came not as enemies, but as observers. They watched humanity from a distance, studied their wars and their art, their violence and their kindness. Then, 10 years ago, they offered an alliance, trade, knowledge, protection from the darker things that lived between the stars. Earth accepted. How could they not? But the alliance was cold. The Valari shared technology and information, but nothing else. They did not laugh at human jokes. They did not appreciate human music. They looked at humans the way a scientist looks at insects, with interest, but without warmth. And at the center of the Valari Empire sat Queen Lyra. Tae had read everything about her. She had ruled for 300 years. Her empire covered 40 star systems. She had never lost a war, never made a bad decision, never shown weakness. The reports described her as perfect, cold, efficient, a machine in the shape of a woman. Tae did not believe the reports. He had learned long ago that everyone had something hidden inside them. Even the coldest person had a fire somewhere, buried deep. His job was to find that fire. The ship landed on a platform made of white crystal. Tae stepped outside and felt the alien air fill his lungs. It was thin and cool, like breathing on a mountaintop. The sky above was purple, and 3 small moons hung low on the horizon. A group of Valari waited for him. They were tall, much taller than humans, with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were the strangest part. They looked like broken glass, fractured into 1,000 tiny pieces, each piece reflecting light in a different direction. One of them stepped forward. "You are Kong Tae," it said. The voice was flat, without emotion. "We will take you to the palace." Tae bowed his head in the Valari way. He had practiced this many times. "Thank you. I am honored to be here." The Valari did not respond. They simply turned and walked away, expecting him to follow. The palace was the largest structure Tae had ever seen. It rose from the ground like a mountain made of light. The walls were transparent, and inside them, colors moved and flowed like living things. Blue, gold, green. The colors never stopped moving, never repeated the same pattern twice. Tae was led through long hallways and up winding stairs. He passed hundreds of Valari, but none of them looked at him. None of them spoke. They moved in silence, each one knowing exactly where to go and what to do. Finally, he reached the throne room. It was a vast circular space with no ceiling. The purple sky stretched above, and the 3 moons had moved to hang directly overhead. In the center of the room stood a throne made of pure white crystal, and on the throne sat Queen Lyra. She was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe. Her silver skin was smoother than the others, almost like polished metal. Her hair was long and white, falling past her shoulders like a waterfall of snow. Her fractured eyes looked at Tae. He felt like she was seeing everything about him, every secret, every fear, every hope he had ever had. "Kong Tae," she said. Her voice was soft, but carried through the entire room. "You are the new liaison from Earth." "Yes, Your Majesty. I am honored to serve the alliance between our peoples." "The alliance does not require honor," the Queen said. "It requires efficiency. You will work with my advisors to ensure our trade agreements continue. You will report any concerns to the proper channels. You will not waste my time with unnecessary meetings." Her words were cold, dismissive. Tay had expected this. "Understand, Your Majesty," he said. "I will do my best to be useful." The Queen nodded once. "You are dismissed." Tay bowed again and turned to leave. But as he walked toward the door, he glanced back one last time. And that was when he saw it. Queen Lyra's fingers moved against the arm of her throne. It was a small movement, barely visible. Her fingers tapped once, twice, 3 times against the crystal. Then they stopped. It was nothing. It meant nothing. Any other person would have missed it completely. But Tay had spent his entire life watching people. He had learned to see the small things that others missed. A twitch of the eye, a slight change in breathing, a movement of the hands. The Queen's finger tapping was not random. It was nervous, uncertain. It was the movement of someone who was not as calm as they appeared to be. Tay walked out of the throne room with a new understanding. Queen Lyra was hiding something. Behind her perfect face and her cold words, there was something else. Something she did not want anyone to see. He did not know what it was. Not yet. But he would find out. That night, Tay sat in his small room in the diplomatic quarters. He looked out the window at the alien city below. The crystal towers glowed with soft light. Valari walked through the streets in perfect silence. He thought about the Queen. He thought about her fractured eyes and her cold voice. He thought about her fingers tapping against the throne. Everyone had a secret. Everyone had a fire burning inside them, even if they tried to hide it. Tay had come to this planet to build an alliance. But now, he had a different goal. He wanted to understand Queen Lyra. He wanted to know what she was hiding, and why it would not be easy. She had ruled for 300 years. She had built walls around herself that no one had ever broken through. But Tay was patient. He had time, and he had something else, something the Valari did not seem to understand. He had hope. Tay smiled and looked up at the 3 moons hanging in the purple sky. This was going to be interesting. 3 months passed on Valaris Prime. Tay learned the rhythm of the alien world. He learned when the 3 moons rose and when they set. He learned which streets to walk and which buildings to avoid. He learned to eat their strange food that tasted like nothing and everything at the same time. But most importantly, he learned about the Valari. They were not like humans at all. They did not talk to each other with words. Instead, they shared thoughts through something called the hive mind. Every Valari was connected to every other Valari, like drops of water in a great ocean. They knew what the others knew. They felt what the others felt. They were never alone, but they were also never truly themselves. Kim Yuna arrived on the 2nd month. She was a scientist who studied alien life, and Tay was glad to see another human face. Yuna was small and quick, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She asked questions constantly, always wanting to know more. "Their biology is amazing," Yuna told Tay one evening. They sat together in the human quarters eating food from Earth that had been shipped across the stars. They have silicon in their brains, instead of carbon. Their neural networks work like computers. They process information faster than any human could dream of. "But they don't feel anything," Tay said. Why, Una nodded slowly. "That's the strange part. They removed emotion from themselves thousands of years ago. They thought it made them weak. So they changed their own biology, cut out the parts of their brains that created feelings." She shook her head. "Can you imagine? Choosing to stop feeling anything forever?" Tay thought about the Queen, her cold eyes, her flat voice, her fingers tapping against the throne. "Maybe they didn't remove everything," he said quietly. Captain Beakwan was the 3rd human on the planet. He commanded the starship Horizon, which stayed in orbit above Valaris Prime. Juan was older than Tay and Yuna, with gray hair and a face marked by years of difficult decisions. He had fought in wars against alien species that wanted to destroy Earth. He did not trust easily. "Be careful with the Queen," Juan warned Tay one day. They stood on the observation deck of the Horizon, looking down at the crystal planet below. "She has conquered 40 star systems. She has destroyed species that stood in her way. She is not your friend." I know, Tay said. But I don't think she's my enemy either. Juan shook his head. Everyone is an enemy until they prove otherwise. That's how you survive in space. Tay understood why Juan felt this way. The universe was dangerous. Humanity had learned this the hard way. But Tay believed there was another path. Not every relationship had to be built on fear and power. Some could be built on understanding. The meetings with Queen Lyra continued. At first they were short and formal. The Queen asked about trade numbers and resource allocation. Tay gave her reports and answered her questions. Nothing more, but slowly, things began to change. The Queen started asking different questions. Strange questions that had nothing to do with politics or trade. Why do humans laugh? She asked one day. Tay was surprised. No Valari had ever asked him something like this before. We laugh when something makes us happy, he said, or when something surprises us, or sometimes when we're nervous. That is illogical, the Queen said. Making noise does not solve problems or improve efficiency. No, Tay agreed, but it feels good. It connects us to other people. When we laugh together, we feel less alone. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Her fractured eyes studied him carefully. Then she asked another question. What are tears? Tay explained, crying. He explained how humans leaked water from their eyes when they were sad or hurt or even very happy. The Queen listened without expression, but Tay noticed that she leaned forward slightly. She was interested. More than interested. She was hungry for information. Over the following weeks, Tay told her many things. He told her about music, how humans created sounds that had no purpose except to make people feel something. He told her about art paintings and sculptures that existed only to be beautiful. He told her about love, how humans would sacrifice everything for another person. Even when it made no logical sense, the Queen always said these things were inefficient, wasteful, pointless. But she always asked for more. One day, Tay told her about his grandmother. He told her about growing up in a city called Busan, on the coast of a country called Korea. He told her about sitting with his grandmother on rainy days, eating food she had cooked with her own hands. He told her about the sound of the ocean during monsoon season when the waves crashed against the rocks like angry giants.
Ow.
Why do you remember these things? The Queen asked. Your grandmother is dead. The food is gone. The rain has stopped. What purpose does this memory serve? Tay smiled sadly. The memory keeps her alive in a way. When I think about her, I feel like she's still with me. That's what memory is for. Not to store information, but to hold on to the people we love. The Queen did not respond. But Tay saw something flicker in her fractured eyes. Something that had not been there before. That night, Tay spoke with Yuna about his conversations with the Queen. She's asking about emotions, Yuna said, her voice filled with wonder. Tay, that's incredible. The Valari haven't cared about emotions for 10,000 years. Why would their queen suddenly start asking about them now? I don't know, Tay admitted. But I think something is happening to her. Something she doesn't understand. Yuna pulled up her research on her computer screen. I've been studying their history. Before the Great Convergence, before they created the Hivemen, the Valari were different. They had art. They had music. They had families who loved each other. They were like us. What happened? They decided that emotion was weakness. They had wars, terrible wars, caused by jealousy and hatred and fear. So their leaders made a choice. They would remove emotion completely. They changed their own biology, connected everyone into the hive mind, and erased thousands of years of culture. Yuna's voice was soft. They thought they were saving themselves. But I think they lost something important. Tay nodded. He thought about the Queen sitting alone on her throne, ruling an empire of silent, emotionless beings. She had lived for 300 years. 300 years without laughter, or tears, or love. What would that do to a person? Captain Juan found Tay later that night. I've heard about your little conversations with the Queen, he said. His voice was hard. You're getting too close. I'm doing my job, Tay replied. Your job is to maintain the alliance, not to become friends with an alien conqueror. Juan stepped closer. She's using you, Tay. She's gathering information about human weakness. When she has what she wants, she'll throw you away. Tay looked at the older man. He understood Juan's fear. He even respected it. But he did not share it. Maybe you're right, Tay said. Or maybe she's reaching out because she needs something that no Valari can give her. Maybe she's reaching out because she's lonely. Juan laughed bitterly. Lonely? She has a billion minds connected to hers. She's never alone. Being connected isn't the same as being understood, Tay said quietly. And being surrounded by people isn't the same as having someone who cares about you. Juan had no answer for that. Tay returned to his room and looked out at the Crystal City. Somewhere in the great palace, Queen Lyra sat on her throne, ruling her perfect empire with her perfect mind, but perfection. Tay was beginning to understand could be its own kind of prison. The message came at midnight. Tay was sleeping when his communication device lit up with a soft blue glow. He opened his eyes and read the words on the screen. You have been granted access to the Imperial Archive. Come tomorrow. Come alone. There was no signature, but Tay knew who had sent it. Only one person on Valeris Prime could grant access to the Imperial Archive. The next morning, Tay told Yuna about the message. The Imperial Archive. Yuna's eyes went wide. Tay, that place holds 10,000 years of Valari history. No human has ever been allowed inside. This is huge. I know, Tay said. The question is why? Why would she give me this access now? Yuna thought for a moment. Maybe she trusts you. Maybe all those conversations meant something to her. Or maybe Captain Juan was right, Tay thought. Maybe this was a trap. Maybe the Queen was leading him somewhere dangerous. But Tay had not come to Valeris Prime to play it safe. He had come to build bridges, and sometimes building bridges meant taking risks. The Imperial Archive was located deep beneath the palace. Tay walked down stairs that seemed to go on forever, descending into the heart of the planet itself. The walls changed from crystal to stone, then from stone to something older, dark metal that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. A Valari guide led him to a great circular door. The guide pressed its hand against the metal, and the door slid open with a sound like a giant breathing. You have 3 hours, the guide said. Do not touch anything that glows red. Do not speak to the keepers. Do not enter the restricted sections. Then the guide left, and Tay was alone. The archive was like nothing he had ever seen. It was a vast underground cavern filled with floating lights. Each light contained information, thousands of years of knowledge compressed into small glowing orbs. They drifted through the air like fireflies waiting to be called. Tay spent his first hour learning how to use the archive. He called up histories of ancient wars, records of planets that no longer existed, studies of species that had been conquered and absorbed into the Empire. The knowledge was endless. He could have spent a lifetime here and still not seen everything, but Tay was not interested in everything. He was interested in one thing only. On his second hour, he found a section marked with old symbols. The symbols were faded, almost invisible, as if someone had tried to erase them long ago. Tay recognized them from Yuna's research. They were from before the Great Convergence, from the time when the Valari still had emotions. He should not go there. The guide had warned him about restricted sections, but the door was not locked. And something told Tay that this was why the Queen had given him access. She wanted him to find this place. The restricted section was darker than the rest of the archive. The floating lights here were dim and gray, barely alive. Tay walked past shelves filled with objects that looked ancient beyond measure, books made of crystal, devices that no longer worked, artwork that had been hidden away for 10,000 years. Then he found the records. They told the story of the Valari, before they became what they were now. Tay read about their great cities, filled with music and color. He read about their families, their marriages, their children who laughed and played. He read about their art paintings that made people cry, songs that made people dance, stories that were passed from generation to generation. The Valari had been beautiful once, alive in ways they no longer were. Then came the wars. The records showed how emotion had torn the Valari apart. Jealousy led to betrayal. Fear led to violence. Love led to obsession. The Valari watched themselves destroy everything they had built, all because they felt too much, so their leaders made a decision. They would remove emotion completely. They would connect every mind into a single network, creating perfect harmony and perfect peace. No more jealousy. No more fear. No more love. The great convergence happened over 100 years. One by one, the Valari gave up their individual minds and joined the collective. One by one. They forgot how to feel, and the royal bloodline Queen Lyra's bloodline had been the first to undergo the change. They led by example, showing their people that emotion could be erased, that perfection could be achieved. Tay felt sick. He understood now why the Valari were the way they were. They had not been born cold. They had chosen to become cold because they thought it was the only way to survive. But was it really survival? Or was it just a different kind of death? Then Tay found something else. A small section hidden behind the historical records. Private files that should not have been there. They belonged to Queen Lyra. Tay knew he should not read them. They were personal. Secret, but his hands moved on their own. Calling up the files and opening them one by one, the first entry was from 50 years ago. When humanity had first been contacted, humans are strange creatures. They waste energy on activities that serve no purpose. They create sounds called music that have no function. They produce water from their eyes when they experience loss. This is highly inefficient. I do not understand why they have survived as a species. The second entry was from 10 years ago. I have watched more recordings of human behavior. They fight wars, but then they forgive their enemies. They lose loved ones, but then they continue living. They face death, but then they laugh and create art. There is something in them that does not make sense. I must study this further. The third entry was from 1 year ago. The human called Kang Tay has been assigned to Valeris Prime. I reviewed his file. He is not remarkable in any measurable way. He is not strong. He is not particularly intelligent. He has no special abilities. But his reports suggest he has a skill for understanding others. I am curious what he will see when he looks at me. Tay's heart beat faster. She had been watching him from the very beginning. The fourth entry was from 3 months ago. The day Tay had arrived. I met the human today. He bowed correctly and spoke the proper words. He was dismissed quickly, but as he left I noticed something. He looked back at me. His eyes saw something. I do not know what he saw. For the first time in many years I feel uncertain. This uncertainty is inefficient. I will ignore it. The fifth entry was from last week. The human speaks of something called hope. I do not understand it. He says, it is the belief that things will be better, even when there is no evidence to support this belief. This is irrational. This is foolish. Yet when he describes it, there is a malfunction in my processing. I wish to malfunction again. The sixth entry was from 3 days ago. I watched recordings of human music today. I chose a piece called a symphony. It lasted 47 minutes and contained no useful information. My efficiency dropped by 2.3% while I was watching it. I deleted the files immediately. Then I restored them. Then I watched the symphony again. I do not understand what is happening to me. The final entry was from yesterday. What would it feel like to feel? This question has entered my mind 847 times in the past month. I cannot remove it. I cannot ignore it. The human has done something to me. He has planted something inside my mind that grows larger every day. I do not know if it is a disease or a gift. I do not know if I should destroy it or let it grow. I only know that I am no longer what I was, and I do not know what I am becoming. Tay stood in the darkness of the restricted archive, the Queen's words floating in the air before him. He felt tears forming in his eyes. Real, human tears. Queen Lyra was not cold. She had never been cold. She was simply lost. She had spent 300 years pretending to be a perfect machine, while something inside her remembered what it meant to be alive. She had given him access to this place because she wanted him to know. She wanted someone to understand. She wanted someone to help her feel again. Tay wiped his eyes and made his decision. He would help her. He would show her that the thing growing inside her mind was not a disease, it was hope. And hope was the most human thing of all. Tay did not sleep that night. He lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything he had read in the archive. The Queen's words played over and over in his mind. What would it feel like to feel? The question had become his own now. He knew what he had to do. It was dangerous. It was probably stupid, but it was the right thing. The next morning, he walked to the palace. He did not have an appointment. He did not send a message ahead. He simply walked through the crystal streets, past the silent Valar, and into the great building of light. The guards stopped him at the entrance to the private chambers. "No one enters without permission," one of them said. Its voice was flat and cold, like all Valari voices. "Tell the Queen that Kang Tay needs to speak with her," Tay said. "Tell her it's about the archive." The guards looked at each other. Something passed between them through the hive minda, silent conversation that Tay could not hear. Then one of them nodded. "Wait here." Waited. Minutes passed. They felt like hours. He thought about all the things that could go wrong. The Queen could have him arrested. She could have him killed. She could pretend she did not know what he was talking about and send him away forever. Then the door opened. "The Queen will see you," the guard said. Alone. Tay walked into the private chambers. They were different from the throne room, smaller, quieter. The walls were made of dark crystal that did not glow, and the only light came from a single window that looked out over the city below. Queen Lyra stood at the window with her back to him. She did not turn around. "You read my archives," she said. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "You found my private entries," Tay said. "There was no point in lying. That information was restricted. You broke the rules of the archive. I could have you removed from this planet. I could have you sent back to Earth in shame. I know. Then why did you do it?" Tay took a step closer. "Because you wanted me to." A long moment, Queen Lyra did not move. The only sound was the soft hum of the city outside. Then slowly, she turned to face him. Her fractured eyes looked different in this light, softer, more alive. And Tay saw something in them that he had never seen in a Valari before. "Fear should not have come here," she said. "You should not have read those words. You should pretend you never saw them and return to your diplomatic duties. That would be the efficient choice." "I'm not interested in efficiency," Tay said. "I'm interested in you." The Queen flinched. It was a small movement, barely visible, but Tay saw it. He had surprised her. Perhaps no one had surprised her in centuries. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to me? I am not human. I am not your friend. I am the ruler of an empire that could destroy your world in a single day. You should fear me." "Maybe I should," Tay admitted, "but I don't. Because I've seen what's inside you, Your Majesty. I've seen the part of you that watches human music and wonders what it would feel like to cry. I've seen the part of you that asks about hope and laughter and love. That part is not a machine. That part is not cold. That part is just lost." Queen Lyra turned away from him. She walked to the window and placed her hand against the glass. Her silver skin reflected the light of the city below. "My people believe that emotion is weakness," she said quietly. "We erased it to survive. We watched ourselves tear each other apart with jealousy and hatred and fear. And we decided that the only way to live was to stop feeling anything at all." "I know," Tay said. "I read the history." "Then you know why I cannot be what you think I am? I am the Queen. I was the first of my bloodline to undergo the convergence. I led my people into the hive mind. I showed them that perfection was possible." Her voice cracked slightly. "I cannot go back. I cannot become what I was before." Tay walked to her side. He stood next to her at the window, looking out at the crystal city. "What were you before?" he asked. The Queen was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, older, heavier, full of something that might have been grief. "I was young," she said. "I was curious. I loved to watch the sun set over the mountains. I loved to listen to my mother sing. I I loved a boy named Veeler who made me laugh with his terrible jokes and his clumsy dancing. She closed her eyes. I remember these things like they happened to someone else. Like they were stories I read in a book. But they happened to me. I was alive once. I felt things once. And then I chose to give it all away. You were trying to save your people, Tay said. I was trying to save them, the Queen agreed. But I wonder now if I saved anything at all. We do not fight anymore. We do not hate anymore. But we also do not love. We do not laugh. We do not create anything new or beautiful or meaningful. We simply exist forever, without purpose, without joy. She turned to face Tay, and he saw that her fractured eyes were wet. Not with tears. The Valari had removed the ability to cry centuries ago, but with something that wanted to be tears. Something that was trying very hard to break through. I have watched humans for 50 years, she said. I have watched you suffer and fail and die. I have watched you lose everything and keep going anyway. You are weak and foolish and irrational. You make terrible decisions. You hurt each other constantly. She stepped closer to him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And yet you are alive in ways my people have forgotten. You build things that serve no purpose except to be beautiful. You love people who will only break your hearts. You hope for things that may never happen. You are magnificent, Kangte. Your species is magnificent. And I have spent 300 years on my throne wondering if I gave up something precious when I became what I am. Tay reached out and took her hand. It was cold, as he expected, but it did not pull away. You didn't give it up, he said. It's still there. Inside you. That's why you asked all those questions. That's why you wanted me to find your private entries. That's why you're standing here with me now? The part of you that felt things, that loved things, that wanted things, it never really went away. It's been waiting all this time. Waiting for someone to find it? A sound escaped the Queen's throat. It was strange and broken, like a rusty machine trying to remember how to work. It took Tay a moment to understand what it was. She was trying to laugh. You make it sound so simple, she said. It will be hard. It will be painful. You spent 300 years building walls around yourself, and breaking them down will feel like dying. Then why should I do it? Tay smiled. Because the alternative is spending another 300 years wondering what you're missing. And I think you already know the answer to that question. The first time in 300 years, Queen Lyra smiled. It was small and uncertain, like a flower opening for the first time after a long winter. But it was real. It was genuine. It was the most human thing Tay had ever seen an alien do. I'm afraid, she whispered. I know, Tay said. That's the first step. Fear means you have something to lose. It means you care about what happens next. It means you're already more alive than you were yesterday. The Queen looked at him with her fractured eyes. They were full of something new now. Something bright and terrifying and wonderful. Will you help me? She asked. Will you teach me how to feel again? Tay squeezed her cold hand and felt it grow slightly warmer. Yes, he said. I will. Outside the window, the 3 moons rose into the purple sky, and somewhere deep inside the Crystal Palace, something old and forgotten began to wake up. The changes did not happen quickly. Real change never does. It took months of quiet work, small steps forward, and sometimes painful steps back. But change did happen, slowly and surely. Like a river carving a new path through stone, Tay spent hours with Queen Lyra every day. They talked about everything music and art and love and loss. He brought her recordings of Earth music, starting with simple melodies and building up to complex symphonies. He showed her paintings and explained what they meant. He told her stories about his family, his childhood, his hopes, and his fears. And the Queen listened. She asked questions. She struggled to understand. The first time she truly laughed, Tay was telling her about his grandmother's cooking. He described how the old woman used to burn rice constantly, no matter how hard she tried, and how the family would pretend to enjoy it anyway, because they loved her so much. That is highly inefficient, the Queen said, just like she always did. But then something happened. The corners of her mouth twitched. Her shoulders shook slightly, And then a sound came out of her that she had never made before, a real, genuine laugh. It was awkward and rusty, like a door opening for the first time in centuries. But it was beautiful. The queen laughed until she ran out of breath, and then she looked at Tay with wonder in her fractured eyes. "That felt strange," she said. "My chest hurts. My face muscles hurt. But I want to do it again." The first time she cried was harder. Tay had told her about death, about how humans lost the people they loved and had to keep living anyway. He told her about his grandmother dying, about holding her hand in the hospital, about the emptiness he felt afterward. Queen Lyra listened in silence. Then her face changed. Something broke inside her, and water began to leak from her eyes. Not tears exactly, the Valari had removed the ability to produce tears long ago, but something close. A thin silver fluid that ran down her cheeks like melted metal. She touched her face in confusion. "What is this? What is happening to me?" "You're crying," Tay said gently. "Your body is remembering something it forgot how to do." "It hurts," the queen whispered. "Everything hurts." "No. That's what feeling alive is like sometimes. It hurts. But it also heals." News spread through the Valari Empire. The queen was changing. She spoke differently now, with warmth in her voice that had not been there before. She asked her advisors about their families. She listened to music during her work hours. She smiled at small things, the color of the sunset, the shape of clouds, the sound of rain on crystal. Some of the Valari were confused. Others were frightened. A few were angry. "She has been corrupted by the humans," they said through the hive mind. "She has forgotten her duty. She has become weak." But others watched the queen and felt something stirring inside themselves. Old memories that had been buried for thousands of years. The forgotten feelings that were trying to wake up. Kim Yuna worked with the Valari scientists to understand what was happening. She discovered that the emotional centers of the Valari brain had not been destroyed during the Great Convergence. They had only been suppressed. They were still there, dormant, waiting to be reactivated. "It's like a muscle that hasn't been used in a very long time," Yuna explained to Tay. "It's weak and atrophied, but it can be rebuilt. The Valari can learn to feel again if they choose to." Queen Lyra made a decision. She could not force her people to change that would make her no better than the ancestors, would force them to stop feeling in the first place. But she could offer them a choice. She opened the first cross-species cultural institute on Valaris. Prime. Humans came from Earth to teach music and art and literature. They taught the Valari how to paint, how to sing, how to tell stories that had no purpose except to make people feel something. Some Valari came to the institute out of curiosity. Others came because they had seen the queen change and wanted to understand why. A few came because they were already feeling something and did not know what to do with it. Tay watched the Valari students struggle with their lessons. They did not understand why a painting was supposed to make them feel sad, or why a song was supposed to make them feel happy. But they tried. They practiced. And slowly, very slowly, they began to change. One day, Tay heard laughter coming from the music room. He went to investigate and found a group of young Valari standing around a piano. One of them had just played a wrong note, and the others were laughing, actually laughing, at the mistake. It was clumsy and awkward, and the most beautiful sound Tay had ever heard. "Captain." Bequan came to Valaris Prime for the anniversary of the Alliance. Tay met him at the landing platform, expecting the usual warnings and criticisms. Instead, Juan looked around at the Crystal City with wonder in his eyes. "I heard the reports," he said, "but I didn't believe them until now. They're really changing, aren't they?" "Slowly," Tay said. "But yes, they're changing. You did this?" Juan turned to face Tay. "You came here with nothing but words and patience, and you changed an entire empire. I said you were getting too close. I said she was using you." Shook his head slowly. "I was wrong." "You weren't completely wrong," Tay admitted. "She was reaching out, but not to use me. She was reaching out because she was drowning. She had been drowning for 300 years, and no one had ever tried to help her." Juan was silent for a long moment. Then he did something he had never done before. He put his hand on Tay's shoulder. "What you did here," he said, "it's going to change the relationship between our species forever. Not because of treaties or trade agreements. But because you showed them something they had forgotten. You showed them what it means to be alive. Tay nodded. He thought about all the small moments that had led to this point. The conversations with the Queen, the archive, the first laugh, the first tears, all those tiny steps that had added up to something enormous. Years passed. The Valari Empire was no longer the cold, efficient machine it had once been. Oh, they were still organized and disciplined and powerful. The hive mind still connected them all. But now, there was something else too. There was art in the streets and music in the halls. There were families who said, "I love you" for the first time in 10,000 years. There were old Velar, who remembered what it was like to feel. And young Velar, who were learning to feel for the very first time. Queen Lyra continued to rule, but she was no longer alone. Tay stayed by her side, not as a diplomat, but as a friend. He taught her about hope and joy, about anger and forgiveness. He taught her that it was okay to be afraid, that it was okay to make mistakes, that it was okay to feel too much sometimes, and she taught him things too. She taught him about patience and discipline and the long view of history. She taught him that change took time, that old wounds healed slowly, that even the coldest heart could learn to love again. One evening, many years later, they stood together on the balcony of the palace. The 3 moons hung in the purple sky, just as they had on the night Tay first arrived. The crystal city sparkled below them, and from somewhere in the distance came the sound of music Valari voices singing a human song. "I never thanked you," Queen Lyra said. Her voice was warm now, full of life. "You gave me something I did not know I was missing." "You gave me something too," Tay replied. "You showed me that hope is stronger than I ever imagined, that it can survive anything, even 300 years of being forgotten." The Queen smiled. It was easy for her now, natural, like she had been doing it all her life.